Well, we're here today on the Black Sage bench, actually on the lower side of the Black Sage bench where all the best gravels are. I'm excited about today's tasting. I've known Michael for over 20 years. He's been making wine for nearly 3 decades. And today we're going to have a look at his latest wines, but we're also going to look back at all of his early wines and do a comparison tasting. And it's going to be really interesting to see where Bartier's come from and where they're going.
We've been farming this vineyard coming up on 10 years, but I've been using the grapes from this vineyard before we even purchased it for close on 2 decades now. We're going to taste these wines in 3 flights, and I've thought a lot about this. We're going to taste them in the context of flavor and texture and time. We're going to taste some older wines, and we're going to see how time has affected those wines. I'll tell you where flavor doesn't come from. It doesn't come from the air. It doesn't come from the sun. Flavor comes from the ground. And we've got these grapevines, different varieties. They draw up compounds out of the soil, and they use them in different ways. And it's going to manifest itself differently in the glass of wine.
I see some things in the wines, though. There is a little bit that's grape-related. Like if we take the rosé, you've got some Gewürztraminer in this rosé.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's always a very expressive variety of the flavor. But you toned it down, I guess, with the other...
With blending.
With the rest of the mix.
Yeah.
But you got what you wanted out of that. Yeah, I love that.
Okay. So do I.
I love front to back flavors too. Like sometimes you get a lot of flavor up front and then it fades or goes. Like this wine is like from the front to the back, the flavor just punches right through. Do people talk about flavor much with you, Giselle, when they're at the winery? Or
Yes, that's one of their key components that they ask for. Since we're speaking more so on the Semillon, that is the one that seems to surprise them the most.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, is that minerality, and we can talk about that and incorporate it a lot in the tasting room and show them out in the vineyard when we do our tours. They appreciate it. They can picture it.
I am intimately familiar with this block. It's right behind me, about 200 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And we've dug many holes in this block. There is a lot of calcium carbonate limestone, like a shocking amount of limestone. Typically, people don't think about limestone in the Okanagan, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of limestone in this block. We harvest the clusters, we make the wine, and we taste the minerality. There's pretty nice fruit on this, and yet it's very minerally.
I like it. I like the grass. I like the citrus, and that flavor, the minerality in the end, the lift. I think it's in great shape. So young, and it's going to age well.
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll let you know in about 15 years.
You chose a Syrah from 2019. This, for me, is a good example of often sometimes when I smell a wine, I know what it's going to taste like. Does that make sense to you? Or
Absolutely.
Because this wine, when you smell the nose on this wine, it's very floral.
The lavender.
Intense.
Yeah.
Smells a bit like the desert, too. And it finishes just the way you'd hope it would. Giselle, is there something about that Syrah that you like in particular? Because it's so expressive on the nose.
For me, it is how soft it is. You're still getting all the characteristics of Syrah. You're getting that black pepper note, but it's not the first thing that you pick up.
Yeah.
And it is a reflection of our terroir here on the property.
You managed to stay out of the way as a winemaker.
That's the trick. People talk about non-intervention winemaking. By the fact that we're making wine out of grapes, it's interventionism. If we're getting flavor through winemaking techniques, we're diminishing the wine. I mean, we're taking away the wine's place, its sense of place. So we don't want to do that. This 2019 Syrah transports me, out into the vineyard where it's grown. I can smell, the desert aromas, the lavender, which is grown everywhere around here. It's so refreshing. And it's absolutely unique. I taste that, I don't think I can taste another wine in the world that will taste like that.
You manage the flavors, Michael, because some of these wines are wooded, but you don't taste any wood.
Yeah, we don't manage the flavors, so to speak. We manage to not flavor them.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely correct. Well, you can see that we use oak barrels. We're surrounded by them right now. And oak barrels are very important, but not for flavor. We buy our barrels after they've been used by other wineries for a few years. And we buy them, in a so-called neutral state. What makes them so valuable to us as winemakers is we get the wine into the barrel, and then that wood acts as a membrane, to allow the wine to interact with the air, in the cellar. And there is an interaction, and there's an evaporation. It concentrates the wine a little bit. And you can over-age a wine in a barrel. More is not necessarily better. And we taste them quite frequently, especially as we're getting close. And it's time to take them out of the barrel because, these have softened off.
Is there something going on in the Okanagan that made you choose Merlot? Because a lot of people would say Merlot is not one of the wines that has great flavor. It's kind of a soft red wine. It's not Cabernet. And yet in British Columbia, Merlot seems to have a real affinity for the soil and the site here.
Yeah, God, I love Merlot as a grape variety. I have many colleagues, they talk about Merlot and how it's soft and flabby and doesn't really bring structure to a wine. And are they talking about the same grape variety as me? And because it's the opposite. And it is the same grape variety, but it's a different growing condition. And the Merlot in the Okanagan, it seems to do very well. It's a little bit tender in the winters, as we just found out. But as a grape variety, it makes such delicious, such flavorful wine with a texture which is so approachable, yet structured.
One last wine, it's old, 2015. People would consider it old. We wouldn't say it's terribly old, but at this point, 8 years is a good
That's
time
a good
in
age.
bottle.
Yeah.
What's happened to the flavor here? Completely changed from when it was young. It's completely flipped over.
You've changed. You've tried this, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's certainly still some fruit there. It's very lemony, and there's some
Honey.
honey, something tropical as well, or maybe peach.
In some ways, it's put on weight. When it was young, it was very fruity.
Yeah, that could
The
be, yeah.
acid was bright. Acid is still there, but now the wine is fatter, richer, denser, and lasts longer, I think, in the palate. More gastronomic now, too, I think. You can have this with a lot of different foods. It's kind of an exciting, it's a new life for it instead of another life.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. We have the old Riesling, which has that that little bit of a diesel character to it. We have the young Semillon, both coming from really minerally soils.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Do you see flavor parallels there?
Yeah, I do. I think both of them, they put on flavor for me. They add weight, they add flavors, they age, which makes them even more interesting for me in the long run. They become sort of like human beings. They get more interesting the older they are. How's that?
I don't know. Now you're just bragging.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Wine's a big part of my life because I make my living from it. But at its simplest, it's just part of my meal. And I don't focus too much on it. I don't focus more on the wine than I do, say, the steak that's on my plate. But it's just part of gracious living. Wine is, it's like looking at a piece of art. You can regard it in great detail or just appreciate it. It's part of good conversation with people that you enjoy being around.
Let's talk about texture. Obviously, it's important. You chose it.
Texture, to me, it's everything in a wine. If wine has no texture, there's no hedonism in it. There's no refreshment in it. There's no point in having it with your meal. It's not what you smell and what you taste on your tongue. It's what you feel. It's that drying sensation maybe, or maybe it's that prickle of acid or CO2 on your tongue.
Or some weight. Maybe.
Or some sweetness, weight, dense.
For me, it's one of the key components of complexity. People might not think Chardonnay would have texture. So you've chose this Chardonnay. This is the 22. Where's that texture coming from?
Acidity. Yeah. Crispness. Think about a Granny Smith apple as opposed to an overripe Red Delicious apple if you're up on your Okanagan apples.
Other people would think about barrel fermentation and stirring the lees and getting texture that way. It's a completely different attack.
It is a different attack. As I think I've said, I won't let our white wines touch barrels, and we've tried to keep the wine as far away from air.
Is that your definition of natural? That sort of nasty word natural that no one really knows what it means, but natural winemaking. It seems pretty natural to me.
Another trope or another jargon, in the wine industry is non-intervention. I think that this is the wine that came out of the vineyard. And we do intervene. I mean, we do use yeast, refrigerate the tank.
Yep.
There are interventions that we'll use to try to maintain what came out of the vineyard. We're trying to keep
noble goal.
It is.
I know what the granite. It's got a lot of texture. Is that why you called it granite, or there must be a connection?
I love the word granite. On a wine label, 80% of the substrate material in our soils here is some form of granite.
Yeah.
So we have an Okanagan wine, we have to call it granite.
You're on the Black Sage bench, though, but on the lower side of the bench where there is gravel, there's a lot of sand on the higher side, so it's a whole different ballgame.
Down here we have silts and sands, gravels, cobbles and boulders. Again, granite, all of them, all sizes. And it just brings flavor and texture to the wine.
Remind me about the goal.
Goal is our nod to one of the most important events in the Okanagan history, the 1955 Penticton Vs, winning the World Championship in hockey. Transformative moment for people, for mindset in the Okanagan.
What was your goal with that wine?
Well, finesse. I'm looking for a wine without the peaks and the valleys. Looking for a wine, that's going through smooth like that. Earlier, as we were tasting it, we heard the word dense in there.
Yeah,
and it is.
It is dense.
There's a lot. This is a mouthful of a wine.
There's a symmetry between the gold and the Merlot because the Merlot is so perfect now. It makes me think, I have to think far back tasting it when it was super young, but was it super balanced at the start? Because at the moment it's absolutely at perfection of balance. And usually wines like that are balanced from the very beginning.
The tannins on the granite and the goal, to me, and they're relatively young wines. They are young wines, but they're a little bit grippy.
Yep, sticky.
And the 2014 Merlot doesn't have that grippiness. It's so completely smoothed out. It's just a little bit of dissolved oxygen reacting with the tannins in the wine over the last 9 years.
And it's under screw cap too, which most people would sort of think, wow, that's weird. But I love how clean it is, and I believe it's because it doesn't have a cork stuffed in it for 9 years.
You won't get an argument from me on that.
Well, let's get to the last wine, which is kind of like bottled electricity for me, and that's the texture. It's really electric. We tasted a 2015. I think this wine's going to be twice the wine that the 2015 is at 7 years or 8 years down the road.
This actually comes from Thompson River Valley. Friends of mine who grew these grapes, and they're very good growers, very respectful farmers. It comes from the limestone bedrocks and slopes on the north side of the Thompson River. If there are any chemists that hear this conversation, I'm going to reveal.
This will be good.
This has a pH of 2.68, which is shockingly low, meaning it's very acidic.
Yeah.
And this has a residual sugar or a reducing sugar of 12, which it tastes absolutely dry.
Yes.
And the reason it tastes dry is because of that interaction between the two textures, the sweetness and the acid.
When you add sweetness and acid together in this wine, it spells money.
I was going to say balance, but yeah, that works too.
Yeah, it's such a great wine. Yeah. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Like, this wine is so interesting now that I have no doubt that I bet this wine lives 25 years under screw cap. Somebody would be just delighted to open it 25 years from now, and it'll be really a wicked wine. Great job.
I'll take it. I want to declare, and anybody that finds this otherwise in me, can take me out back. But I want to declare, what we do, we take very seriously. We are incredibly diligent, very hardworking. We're always thinking of better ways to do what we do in making better wine and better representing our vineyards. But it's very important that we don't take ourselves too seriously. We work hard, and then we, step back and we enjoy what we're doing.
Well, I wish we had nothing but time to taste these wines. All of them are old. Let's talk about time and evolution, and what's your thought about aging wines?
I don't think that people understand just how well Okanagan wine can age.
Mm-hmm. What would the ingredients of aging be then? What are some of the things you're thinking about right from the get-go and before harvest even?
For a wine to be age-worthy, it has to have the supporting chemistry, which is basically texture. It has to be. It has to have some acidity to it. You have to have that confluence, and you can have a tannic, acidic wine, which is not going to age well because if it does not have fruit, if it doesn't have character, it's all for naught.
Okay, let's talk about the Cowboy. It's 13 years old. You think it's quite fresh?
I do.
Yeah.
Pick up a lot on the lemon and orange flavors in there.
I don't get to taste these wines too often, and I'm quite
stoked.
Wow, this is aged very well. It's very fresh. It has that underlying chemistry I was talking about. It has fantastic fresh acidity, but there was fruit to begin with, and that fruit has evolved. Gone to that caramelization stage a little bit. It's still fresh fruit in there, but it's incredibly complex right now. I like this a lot.
I wasn't even thinking it was from BC when I was smelling it because it had that sort of old Euro, for me, a Spanish character to it. And I don't mean oxidized. I just mean that style. Anyway, I thought it was in great shape. Lovely wine. Can you describe Chardonnay in one word?
Life.
Life?
Life. That is so alive.
Refreshing.
Refreshing. Okay, that's better. I was going to say acid, but refreshing is better. It's bright, fresh. Chardonnay is a grape that people sometimes don't think much about aging. A lot of people age white Burgundy. We probably have better acidity now than Burgundy on a regular seasonal basis.
With the acids on the Chardonnay, because there aren't going to be tannins there to age the Chardonnay. And it's that texture, it's the fruit, it's the underlying chemistry again.
What I like about this wine was, we saw it earlier though, this wine has weight. It has like barrel weight, oak weight, but there's no oak in the wine.
There's no oak,
which is it's really a fantastic feat, I think, in winemaking to achieve that kind of weight without any oak.
Chardonnay, if I could make nothing else for the rest of my life, I'd be quite happy. I love this grape variety, and I love its versatility. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about the Chardonnay and the Semillon in the same flight.
This is 2011.
Yeah, 1 year older.
This wine is so Semillon. If you could bottle this up and let people smell it, they would probably never forget what the scent of an old Semillon should be.
Yeah, a little bit of grass, alfalfa.
It's all that. It's the grass, it's the alfalfa, it's the honey, it's the figs, and there's a bit of oiliness too. That's kind of a weird term to use, but it is in there.
I'm curious. Do you think that that's hit its stride? Is it over the hill? Is it still on its way? Or
no, because on the palate, it's all citrus and freshness.
Yeah,
it's incredibly fresh. But we've seen Semillons live, 3 decades in a bottle, no problem at all. So maybe you hold on to those. Who gets to see these wines anyways? Do you sell them in the winery or to the wine members or club members? How does it work?
We do sell old wines. We do keep a small amount of what we think are going to be good age-worthy vintages. Lose them in the back of the warehouse for some time, and miraculously, a decade later or so, we'll find them, and we will put them up for sale.
Well, I don't want to blow too much smoke up you, but that is a talent because I've had very long discussions with port producers about vintage port, and I say, how can you possibly know that this wine is going to live for 50 years? But they do know. They know what all the components are that have to be in that wine. So they can set it aside, and it can be great because once it's a vintage port, it's judged its whole life because it lives a long life. So, we're getting a chance to, quote, judge your wine, but in fact, this wine is in fantastic shape. So you made a good selection. If only you'd written down how you did it, Michael.
It's all right there. 2011,
Yeah.
judged by many to be an inferior vintage.
Yeah. Probably me.
Not naming names, but 2011, in my estimation now and in my estimation then, was a spectacular vintage because it gave us the underlying chemistry to age that beautiful fruit. The 2011 Syrah, God, that I think it's still a baby. I don't think that has,
Moved much.
yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Like if we talk about the gold, this is a wine that you can ameliorate the tannins in a young one. You can buy the wine now; it's a couple of years old, and you can serve it with a steak. How does that work versus waiting for
Yeah, there's
10 years?
there are two things that will soften off the tannins in a wine, in a red wine. One is just going to be time, and what's going on in the time is it's just dissolved oxygen, coming from that headspace in the bottle, and it's polymerizing the tannins. It's just making them taste softer. The other thing that's going to soften off the tannins, protein, and that's why young wine, steak,
Yeah.
chicken, whatever, cheese.
Yeah, it just sort of breaks it down right in your mouth.
It literally
Yeah.
in the mouth is where it softens off, and that's why we have a bite, have a sip,
Yeah.
have a bite, and have a sip.
yeah.
The wine makes the food taste better. The food makes the wine taste better.
Yeah. Great points. We're running out of time, though.
Well, don't get down about it, Anthony. You're still moving. I mean, you've been at this a long time. You've been writing about British Columbia wine. You've been a member of the BC wine community, the international wine community. I'm curious to know, do you see, is there anything that we should be continuing here with what you like, or that can be improved, that you don't like?
Well, I can tell you that I'm a big fan of your philosophy, the way that you make wine, the way that you think about wine. I mean, we've shared a lot of experiences over the last couple of decades, both learning together about wine and people and the business. But I think in the end, it comes down to that if you're committed to making quality wines and you spend your life doing it, you get the results. And today we saw that. And if I thought about wines that were in 2011 or 2012, my memory is they weren't that good. And here we are tasting wines that are really shining. So you were at the edge then, and you're still at the edge now. And that's one of the things I like most about Bartier is that you continue to press to deliver the kind of quality that we should be able to get out of this magnificent place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.